Sean and Chris, welcome to Australia, and thanks for doing this today.
Thank you.
Yeah, just going back to training for a moment. Chris, I think you had a workout with Master Dorian Yates some time ago.
Oh, for sure.
You saw that.
And I'm a fan of the HIT style training, the lower volume.
Right.
Not snapping on my tendons and that sort of thing, but that style of training. And it's worked well for me. And I know you did that workout and you went out the back and I think you heaved up afterwards. But what's your thoughts, both of you, on that sort of lower volume style training, if it's done correctly?
Low volume or high volume?
The sort of the lower volume HIT style where you've just got that 1 or 2 sets per exercise.
Yeah, it opened my eyes to a whole other realm of intensity, being from California, having the ocean breeze coming into Gold's Gym, and a lot more relaxed on the intensity side. People laughing and joking, and hit a set laughing and joking. And then I went out there to it was in the summertime. I was even like 43 years old at the time, and to experience that level of intensity was just mind-boggling to me. It felt like it's really hit your respiratory system also. So felt like I was running a sprint, also training with weights and pushing to the limit. So, but I felt that was the best training that I've done as far as promoting muscle size quickly and the density, and it showed throughout Dorian's career the type of density that he displayed. I think that was a lot due to his training, and it tells me a lot to where, I just studied all the stuff that he did, and he didn't allow people in the gym when he would train for the show, and I think a lot of it was due to what he was doing to himself mentally and physically with that style of training. And he does a couple of warm-up sets, but then he goes to the last 2, to failure, and I think, since that time, I patterned my training, my personal training style after that style of training, because I felt that was the best way to make the muscle pop and what a bodybuilder should look like.
Yeah, and mine was different. I liked volume. I trained fast, very little rest between sets, just long enough for my partner to do it. I trained with Chris a couple times and laid him out. It's a different type of endurance type of training for me.
He's another one who wouldn't come pick me up.
Yeah, he's always got car problems. What'd you win? You won $50,000 a year each time you got second at the Arnold Classic, and you always had car problems. What the hell? So I would train faster, and I would train more volume. Huh?
Waiting for you to take me to lunch.
He's always one for a free ride. But my reps were like 12 to 20 repetitions. I liked high volume, 5 to 6 reps. It was totally the opposite of Dorian. But again, it comes back to the individuality of bodybuilding. What works for me may not work for him, and what worked for him wouldn't work for me. But at the same time, while I watched Dorian do what he did, along with Ronnie Coleman, who had probably arguably the worst form when he trains than any bodybuilder, strongest bodybuilder, but the worst form.
Texas style.
Yeah, what made them also is what broke them. I mean, Dorian tore a bicep, tore a tricep, tore a quadricep, rotator cuff. Ronnie Coleman had a neck injury, a back injury, tricep injury. I mean, that style of training will beat you up. So when you get caught up into powerlifting or strongman stuff, and you're trying to be a physique artist, which is what the word I used my entire career, because I followed Frank Zane, Samir Banu, Muhammad Makaway. They got on stage and they showed me something at 180 pounds that a 260-pounder could never show me. So I was fully aware that I needed to train the muscle. I knew that I needed to put some weight on the bar, but I also didn't want to go into that danger zone. No one was ever going to ask me how big my arms were. The judges were never going to ask me how much I squat or I bench press. So I didn't get caught up with numbers. And I didn't get caught up with a training style. I trained with Chris, and he was strong. I tried to keep up with him, and then I would train with somebody else that would, train a little faster and go for the burn and do drop sets. So there was nothing I wouldn't try, but there wasn't one thing that I would stay with in terms of going into harm's way with the weight, the poundage. I knew I wasn't a power lifter. I would never be the strongest, and I would never be the biggest. So I was trying to train to sculpt my physique, and it served me well, injury-free my whole entire career.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, Sean. You spoke about being a physique artist, and some guys get just really, really big. Back in like Arnold's era, the 70s, 80s, Mr. Olympia, there seemed to be really, really beautifully proportioned bodies, and now they're just massive bubbles. What has changed? Like, has the judging criteria changed, or what are the judges looking for, or and will it sort of then go back to what it used to be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the
Social
judging
media.
criteria, huh? Well, I mean, it's evolution. At the end of the day, we got bigger football players, faster track runners. I mean, there's a lot of pharmacology involved, the science, the training, the mentality, bigger everything. We want faster everything. And so it's very easy to get sucked into trying to get there overnight. In the 70s, which if you're a historian, you know who those physiques were. They weren't the biggest. I mean, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger winning the Mr. Olympia was like 229 or 230. He'd be considered small. I mean, Chris competed heavier than Arnold did, but Arnold gave that illusion of so much more. And I've always thought bodybuilding was kind of a magic act. It was an illusion type thing. And you realize that when you meet these guys in person. When I met Chris Dickerson at 42 years old after he won the Mr. Olympia in '82, he was smaller than I was, shorter than I was. And I mean, you open the magazine, he looks 7 feet tall, 600 pounds. And now what you find is that people are, there's supplements for everything. So rather than eat food, they want to pop a pill or take a powder and just try to fast track it. I only took supplements when I didn't have the food to eat. The supplements didn't drive my training. I ate 6 and 7 times a day. If you want to find out something that's harder than training, try to eat 6 or 7 times a day and drink 2 gallons of water. That's hard because you're eating when you're not hungry. You're eating on time, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12. I mean, you're not eating when you're hungry, and it doesn't become an enjoyable thing to eat that kind of food over and over again. Chicken, fish, tuna, egg whites, rice, pasta, potatoes, the same stuff 6, 7 times a day, each week, week after week, and you're looking at the clock and you're watching the calendar and you're just waiting for it to all be over with. So when we finally get here on stage, we may look our worst, but we feel our worst. You know what I mean? We may look our best, but we feel our worst. And we just can't wait really to get it over with. So when we talk about what do we miss in the sport, I don't miss being on the stage competing. I miss performing because that was something I controlled. I picked the music, did my little thing, but the actual competition thing I didn't really care for. And the judges have been, swayed by bigger is better. They're human. My whole argument my entire career was I need different judges every show. I figured the Mr. Olympia, if it had different judges every year, we might wind up with a different champion because it's all subjective opinion. But I came up at a time where you had the judges, and just like clockwork, I looked down and there they are in 1990, there they are in 91. I grew old with those guys, 13 years on the Olympia stage, and stepped off the stage and they stayed. So those opinions don't change. And during that time, I had 3 Mr. Olympia winners. Unfortunately, they're all in the Hall of Fame. Lee Haney won 8 times. From 1984 to 1991. He retired literally undefeated. He lost his first Mr. Olympia, but he was 3rd. Then Dorian Yates wins the Mr. Olympia for 6 years and retires due to injury, and Ronnie Coleman wins 8 more years. Were they the superior bodybuilders? Arguably, yeah. I mean, they had some very good years, but there was also some Hall of Famers that a different group of judges might have changed the look and direction of the sport. I don't harbor any, ill will towards the fact that I didn't win, although I'll fight to the end about the 1994 Mr. Olympia. I thought I arguably had Dorian on the Yates on the ropes, but I always thought bodybuilding is the guy with the fewest flaws. And that year, I thought Dorian had a torn bicep, came in his absolute worst that year in terms of the conditioning, but he was so big and he was so impressive when he turned around to the back that one pose won the show for him. And then, of course, after him, here comes a bigger version in Ronnie Coleman. Bodybuilders are getting bigger because that's what was being rewarded. And now they're trying to find a way to put the genie back in the bottle, create the men's classic physique. They're looking for athletes with athleticism. They're looking for adjectives like beautiful and athletic and symmetry. Those are words we don't even use anymore. There's like 2 or 3 guys that have it. But again, when you follow the leader, you do what these other guys are doing, and they just keep trying to get bigger and bigger, which is why in 2007, I, with the IFBB, helped create the 202-pound division. That was something that I promoted, that I was fighting for, because we were losing all those smaller bodybuilders to these bigger guys, and they were losing because they were just simply bigger. And with the creation of the 202, we started seeing these guys come back and compete a little bit more and have something to fight for, and then ultimately wound up being the 212, which James Flex Lewis has now won for 4 times in a row. But that division, to me, is actually more entertaining to watch and much more competitive to watch. And I see some of those adjectives that got me involved with bodybuilding that I can't apply to the open men's bodybuilding. There's maybe 1 or 2 guys on the open circuit that I really can go, wow. And the rest, you pick them apart and you kind of, you scratch your head, what are they doing?
Yeah, my thing was always the waistline. Like I would even push myself away from the dinner table because I felt like I didn't want my stomach to get bloated past my chest, and I just never liked that look. And I know Ronnie won a couple shows where you couldn't really see his posing trunks on the side, and I was never a fan of that type of style of being a bodybuilder. So, Sean had the prototypical physique for being one of the top guys in the world for that long, and just patting yourself after, being able to see every little detail of the human body, to be like just a detailed out, physique, and that's what bodybuilding was to me, having every muscle developed, being able to display it, being able to control your stomach to the fullest. That's where I kind of like wanted bodybuilding to stay in that realm. They seem like they're trying to get back to that. Just so many guys that just don't control that area and don't put in the work to practice that to that capacity. So that's why I always wanted bodybuilding to stay.
Yeah, and we see guys at these shows backstage like eating bucketfuls of food before they go on the stage. That food has nowhere to go except to your stomach. So you can pump up all you want to and do the push-ups, but I always went on stage hungry. Like before I got on the competition stage, it was time for me to literally eat. So I was able to do things with my body that some of the guys that pig out backstage can't do, because that food just sits here. And when you come out here and you got to go through those poses, you're breathing through your stomach, not your lungs. And when you're called upon to do these certain poses, there's absolutely no way you can hit them because that food hasn't passed through your system. You haven't had water to flush it through your system. So my advice to bodybuilders, when you go into a contest and you're toting around your food bag because you're still on that mentality that I got to eat every 3 hours, well, when you eat right before you walk on the stage, we're going to see exactly where that food went. And right now we see the majority of the contests, the complaints of the bodybuilders have big guts. Some may be attributed to drugs, some could be attributed to insulin, some could be contributed to eating too many carbohydrates. I typically see these guys eating too much food. So you're better off coming on the stage with very light food in your stomach at your hotel, not backstage. I mean, it's a natural reaction to want to eat when you're sitting around doing absolutely nothing because you get nervous. So you're eating rice cakes and potatoes and jam and all this stuff, but it has nowhere to go. And so just be mindful of that when you get on the stage.
Yeah, also another thing I always like to tell some of the people that I work with, like, you're not going to become a champion by eating a bunch of food at the table. That's not going to make the muscle look dense. That's not going to make the muscle bigger. You can make yourself a bigger person, but that actual muscle, like I see some guys on stage, I feel like they're a big guy with small muscles. Just develop it in the gym. That's where your champions are born and made, in the gym, and the preparation that goes along with preparing for the show, not just eating a bunch of food and just coming, as a bigger person.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
G'day, guys.
G'day.
You guys are both top of your leagues, basically, when you were competing. We know what you've done to get there, but what mistakes did you make during those years, and how did you realize you were making those mistakes, and how did you rectify them?
For me, I made my mistakes early, and unfortunately, we typically make them on the biggest stage, so it takes a year to correct that mistake. But when I turned pro in 1987, I went on a seminar tour and a guest posing tour and had to qualify for the Mr. Olympia, and I went into the New York Night of Champions, a contest that I was touted to win coming off the Nationals, because one of my chief competitors was Phil Hill, and I'd already beaten him, so I kind of put him in my rear view, but I continually traveled, I was making money, I was living the dream, and I thought, as long as I keep guest posing, and going to these places, they'll feed me right, I'll get to train, and I'll get to do the, practice on the stage, and I didn't take the time to just stay at home, eat, sleep, and train. So I made my biggest mistake on the biggest stage. I did qualify for the Olympia in '88 by getting 4th place, and then by the time the Mr. Olympia rolled around, the day before my birthday, I looked like I was burned out. I looked like I had been guest posing all over the world instead of staying in the gym and eat, sleeping, and training like I did the Nationals. And I wound up in 13th place at the Mr. Olympia. It was significant for me at that time of my career because I'd never placed that low before. 30 minutes from my hometown. Everybody in the audience, it seemed like I knew, either from the gym or my friends came to see me. And I thought I was going to do a whole lot more than what I did. And getting 13th place means you get like one call out. I turned into the biggest bodybuilding fan there was. I was oiling up, Barry DeMay, and I'm over here trying to help Rich Gaspari, and I became a helper backstage, like a kid in a candy. There was nowhere else I wanted to be at that time but backstage at the Olympia with these guys I was helping, knowing that when I go home, their pictures are still on my wall. These are guys that I idolized. And here I was backstage, like, talking with them. And I don't even want to use the word competing because I didn't get to compete with them. But then when it was all over, I went home and I realized there was 24 bodybuilders in that show. I got 13th place in the subpar contest preparation. I beat Robbie Robinson. I beat a lot of bodybuilders. I beat Albert Beckles, who in 1985 when I was here was second in the Mr. Olympia at, 90 years old? He was an old dude, but he got second in Olympia in 85. So I found some nuggets in defeat that if I ever go back to that Mr. Olympia contest, I'm coming prepared. And it was at that time I took the 1989 year off and came back in 1990. I went from 13th place to 3rd on a drug-tested competition, and I stayed in the top 5 for the balance of my career at that Mr. Olympia, which is pretty much the only show I focused on. The reason that I was able to pull that off in that time period was because I put my mindset on the same mindset as a Lee Haney and a Gaspari. It was their job. It was their business. It was no longer fun. It was no longer something that they just dabbled in. They had the mindset that they wanted to be the best in the world. So if I pick up a basketball, I'm doing the same thing that Magic Johnson's doing and Larry Bird. But their mindset when they pick up a basketball, they're going all the way. They're all in. And so when I trained and had the opportunity to train with other bodybuilders that I had to compete against, it was like a heavyweight championship fight. I took my job very serious. I didn't look at bodybuilding as something that was fun and adventurous. I wanted to be the best in the world. And the only way I could put myself in a position to potentially be one of those guys was to believe that I could do it. And so I didn't do the traveling like I used to. I had to say no to guaranteed money, making appearances around the world that I had become accustomed to. And I found more comfort and resolve in the fact that I went in that contest and I lost every year, but I continued to be very consistent. And I was consistent because my thing was to be the best Sean Ray that I can be. And I found being in the top 5, if that's the worst I can do as a professional bodybuilder, then I'm cool with that. I was losing to some guys that were bigger than me, but by the time my career was over and I got fat and happy and comfortable, and I look back, I realized in my career as a bodybuilder, there were only 2 men in the world that I never beat, and that was Lee Haney and Dorian Yates. They collectively have 14 Mr. Olympias, and they never got beat in a Mr. Olympia contest. So I found satisfaction and realized, okay, I'm not Mr. Olympia, but I beat everybody else that I stood next to on stage, right, Chris?
Me too.
I got to remind Chris once in a while. Every once in a while, I got to remind Chris, I beat your butt when you were younger.
A couple times.
And I said to Chris when he was coming up, too, and it was very competitive because we trained a few times. When you beat me, I quit. I retire.
He was like, you're never going to beat me.
I'm done.
Don't even try it.
Listen, Joe Frazier, I'm done. If you beat me, I'm going to... And he got me, damn it. In 1989, he got me. I don't know what he did, but I took my hat off. What'd you get, 3rd that year?
Yeah, 3rd place. That was the year I actually told people I was going to actually do it. I was always aiming for the top 6 a lot of times, but I was top 6 in 94 as a rookie, and then I was 6th again. But being a top 6 became like, okay, I've done that, but now I want to get to that upper echelon of the champions. I want to get one of those big medals that Sean and those guys got. So I finally got that in '99, and I had
some. Be in top 3 to get that.
I had some. That's right. I had some unorthodox ways of getting ready for shows. Like I was a super shy person growing up, so I figured the only way to break that and be able to perform was to just throw myself in a fire. I would go to clubs and just go up on the stage where everyone has to watch you, and under the spotlight, and just dance. I'm one of the greatest dancer, but I was hitting some poses and I was dancing. I was doing my thing, but I did that week after week for like up until 5 weeks out from the '99 Olympia, and then I made a mistake of talking to a very relaxed writer for Flex Magazine, and he kind of just put it all out there, like, yeah, Chris is partying, getting ready for the show.
Chris was a partier.
Shut up. But look what happened. It turned the whole sport into that, right?
Yeah.
So then I had the first after parties as a bodybuilder. The first couple of years, 1 year I didn't compete in Olympia, and then another year I had another after party, and then there you go, it just catch on. I was just early, so everyone thought I was crazy.
Early. I think for every bodybuilder, there's a moment of truth that you flip that switch. Like he said, he didn't want to be in the top 6, he wanted to be in the top 3. And when you flip that switch and you make that decision, the whole perspective, the approach to going to the gym, preparing your food, canceling on the parties, making the determination that this is a journey that I'm on, not my friends are on, it changes who you are. It changes the way you look at the sport of body. It became a business. And once you get to that point, like when I broke into the top 3 of the Mr. Olympia, I believed it. I believed in the idea that I could one day be Mr. Olympia. And I think if you get to a place where you believe you can be the best in the world at what you do, it's a very powerful drug. No pun intended, Chris. It's very powerful in the idea that you can actually be the very best at what you do. And at 5'7", 210 pounds, I
You're
actually believe
5'6",
it. All right,
Sean.
I'm 5'7". He doesn't want to believe I'm 5'7".
Sean, you're 5'6".
We'll break out the ruler.
Let's get it on, dude.
We'll do it again right now.
Let's get some.
See, this is what got him in trouble on the
Let's
Olympia
get some.
stage. This is what fired my workouts up. But when you get to that point, and it doesn't have to be a Mr. Olympia level, it could be for me, I went from the local contest in my little area to a city contest, to the state championship level, to the junior world level, to the junior national level, to the national level, to the international level. So I wasn't one of those guys, I qualified, so I'm just going to go to the next level. No, I methodically picked the next level so that there was a level of consistency and also an opportunity to win. And when you got to the Mr. Olympia level, and it was just one of those, wow, I'm glad to be here. On that Mr. Olympia stage, it's not a glad to be here type thing in the aftermath when you go home and you don't have anything to show for the experience. So that's when the switch went off for me, and I took my job very serious. And I think everyone has those moments.
Yeah, as far as mistakes I made, I think just I didn't have the right people around in my circle that I should have had. And a lot of people didn't have the same goals as I had. They wasn't as special as I was as a bodybuilder, so they didn't care, what was derailing me out of becoming, to that top spot. But then believe it in yourself. Even though you see people up there, some people don't actually believe they can actually do it, but they actually compete. But a lot of times, sometimes I didn't really think that I could do that. But then after my career was over, I was like, man, I could have did a little bit more of this or that, and I probably could have, went to the top spot.
It's very important what you believe in yourself. Is there another question? Yes.